I want to ask you a difficult question. What if you're not choosing unhealthy relationships anymore, but you're still reacting as if you are? That's what we're going to talk about today. And it's not because you're broken, but it's because your brain is still trying to protect you. Stay tuned. We're going to dig in. Welcome to the secret formula of femininity for women who want to live a more feminine, fun, and fabulous life. I'm Dr. Nicole Montero, your host on this weekly journey to unlocking your inner radiance, nurturing fulfilling relationships, and becoming the best version of yourself. Welcome back to the secret formula of femininity. I'm your host and guide on this journey to tapping into your feminine essence, Dr. Nicole. So, this season we have been talking about relationships in all different facets. And one of the biggest misconceptions I see with people is around self sabotage and what that means. We've heard the terms, we've probably even seen ourselves or other people doing it. But the big misconception is that when you self sabotage or when someone is self sabotaging, they're doing it consciously. They're doing it because they just want to ruin a good thing. And that's almost never what I see. In fact, the core definition of self sabotage is that it's something that you aren't always conscious of and that you don't feel in control of. And when I see self sabotage, what I see is protection. And today we're going to talk about these 5 patterns of protection that could actually be ruining your relationship. So if you've been betrayed, then your brain tries to protect you and it becomes hyper vigilant, looking around like, oh my God, what is going to happen next? If you've been abandoned, then your brain scans for signs that someone is going to leave, again, trying to protect you. If you've been overly criticized in a harsh way, especially as a child, your brain begins to expect rejection. The brain is only doing what it is meant to do, which is to protect you. So these aren't character flaws. That is so important because women, as we are going on this journey of healing and embracing healthy, fulfilling relationships and becoming our best feminine selves, it's so important to have self compassion because when we start getting mad and feeling like it's a character flaw, we just start feeling more shame and hiding and going back into the same patterns. So it is definitely important to realize these aren't character flaws. They're adaptations. These patterns are adaptations. And the problem, though, comes when these adaptations continue long after the danger has passed. In fact, that's like the core definition of trauma. It's something that happened in the past that you're living in the present with as if it's still there. So, as we go through these 5 patterns, I want you to hold on to that self compassion, the need for that self compassion. In fact, let's give a hand clap for self compassion. It needs its own category that we just embrace and hold on to. So let me bring you into the consulting room, as I call it. And this is a woman who was in one of my coaching programs, and I'm just going to call her Renee. And one of the things that she came in talking about in the program is her desire for marriage, her deep desire for marriage, which shout out to her or any woman who can embrace that desire because there's so much that's telling us that we shouldn't desire that. And I think you guys know my stance on it. Marriage is important, it's beautiful, it's healthy, and there's no shame in wanting it and leaning into embracing it and wanting it. So the thing with Renee is she felt like she had done the healing. She had done so many facets of healing on herself. But then she met someone who was emotionally available. So shout out to her for actually attracting that healthy person. Right? Because that was something very different from her pattern before. And at first, she was really thrilled. She's like, oh my gosh, like we were all in the community. She was super excited, all the green flags. She was looking more for compatibility, not just chemistry, the whole thing that we've been talking about. But then after a few weeks, something shifted for Renee. She started doing things like testing him. She started playing games, waiting hours to reply to his messages when she hadn't done that before. And when there was really no Like there was no reason, rhyme or reason for her to do that. She started creating distance in little ways, kind of coming off a little cold and just, having what she was calling boundaries, but it was really just trying to test him. She started questioning every little thing he did when there were no signs, there were no red flags or glaring things that were like, okay, you need to start questioning and testing him. And she kept telling herself and telling us, well, I'm just protecting my heart because I have to make sure I'm not going to get hurt. So when we slowed this conversation down, I asked her, okay, you say you're protecting your heart. What are you protecting your heart from? Exactly. Like we have to really be clear when we're saying these things. What are we talking about? So we can make these blanket statements like, I'm just protecting my heart. And one thing I notice is a lot of times women, we will hear these things, and because it plays into a narrative that we kind of unconsciously believe or we've lived ourselves, everyone's like, yeah, girl, you need to do that. And we don't even know what we're talking about. So I asked her, what are you protecting your heart from? And she finally said, from needing someone. Listen to that. She wasn't saying she had to protect her heart from being hurt or someone trying to take advantage of her or all of these things that someone could do from her. She was trying to protect herself from a basic need within herself. She didn't want to need anyone. Just sit with that for a minute. You want connection, you want marriage, you want to be with a person who's available, but then you want to cut it off and say, I don't want to need someone. So, of course, there's a whole story around what does it mean to need someone? And we talk about that in terms of our feminine energy to embrace that vulnerability and that connection, and that it's okay. It doesn't make you weak. Your softness is not your weakness. So, with Renee, her opening up and saying that actually changed the whole conversation. Sometimes we don't sabotage love because we don't want it. We sabotage it because we are afraid of exactly how much we do want it. And that's terrifying because wanting and desiring and needing makes it feel like we're in a position of vulnerability. And so many of us are not comfortable with vulnerability. So there's some reframes that I'm going to talk about. And one of them is that being vulnerable is not a bad thing. You can still be secure and grounded within yourself and allow yourself to be vulnerable with a person that you've used your intuition to understand that they're going to protect that vulnerability. That's where understanding those green flags comes in. So make sure you listen to or watch that episode. But let's talk about one of the core reframes or beliefs that I want us to challenge. Many people feel like healing is a destination. Once you get there, you'll never feel afraid again. You'll never have these feelings of discomfort or uncertainty or just inner vulnerability. And that is not true. At least I don't think it's true. Because healing means you recognize when fear is driving the car. It doesn't mean there's never going to be fear, but you get to take the wheel back and say, wait a minute, is this rational? Is this based on trauma from the past? Is this based on a story or a narrative that I'm telling myself? So I want you to think about how can you reframe this idea that you do healing, you get to a destination, you're there, and then everything is perfect. You never have any doubts, you never have any fears. And maybe think of it differently that healing is a journey. And the more you're on that path, the more you travel that journey, you're no longer letting fear control you. It doesn't mean fear is never there. One of the things about love that I love talking to people about, and I had to come to terms with, is that it's always a risk. Anytime, anything that's worth it, investing in the stock market, starting a business, pursuing a career, trusting a friend, connecting with your romantic partner. It involves risk. You can never guarantee. So, thinking that you're going to control everything, once you let that go, you can be okay with the risk, but also understand what the potential benefits are. So, let's talk about these 5 protection patterns that I've seen as women are self sabotaging. I don't really want to call them signs, but just think of them as patterns because they're things that happen over and over that when we recognize them, that's the first step in breaking that pattern. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but the awareness and the recognition are key. So the first pattern is what we call testing instead of trusting. And that's where you suddenly start to switch gears for no apparent reason. And as you find yourself leaning into trust and openness, you pull back and you say, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. Let me test the waters. And then you go into overdrive with that. So you completely pull back from the trusting, even though there was no sign or thing that caused it. And you go into doing these little tests, not texting back, not being available, trying to catch the person in little lies, spying on them, looking through their phone, all of these things because you're trying to test and see if you should trust. But what happens is you end up causing confusion. The person's like, and especially men, they like consistency. So when you start switching up for no reason and then you're not communicating that reason, it causes them to kind of pull back. And then what happens? What happens? That becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're like, see, he's pulling back. I knew I shouldn't have trusted. But it's almost like you provoked it with that testing. So that first pattern is that testing instead of trusting. The second pattern is mistaking peace for boredom. And make sure you listen to the episode on why boredom is an important part of that compatibility. For so many of us, we have been in the chaos where it just feels normal. Our nervous system is used to being hyper vigilant. The chaos is familiar. Being always on alert is familiar. And anything where we have to settle down and just be and just embrace the peace, it feels unfamiliar. It feels boring. It feels threatening, believe it or not. Think about it. It's almost like if you have a toothache or any kind of muscle pain, and during the day, you're distracted because you're busy. Not to say it doesn't hurt at all, but you're mainly distracted. And the pain really comes at night because you've settled down. There's nothing to distract you. All of the muscles and the pain, everything starts to contract and you feel it in that moment. Well, for a lot of us, that's what peace feels like. It feels like, okay, there's nothing to distract me. So I'm noticing all of these feelings. I'm noticing all of these thoughts and these doubts and the mistrusts and the past things that have happened that are making me feel like this isn't right. So again, it's that self-awareness to be able to say, wait a minute, okay, this is my mind playing tricks on me. Anybody old enough to remember the Ghetto Boys? Okay, they had a song called Your Mind is Playing My Mind Playing Tricks on Me. Okay? So sometimes our mind is playing tricks on us because we are not used to embracing the peace. We feel like we've been disappointed. That's why I say the healing journey has to continue within the context of a relationship. Because when you're by yourself, you're like, all right, it's fine. Nobody's disturbing my peace. I don't have to get hurt. These are the things we hear, right, ladies? I don't have to worry about these men. But we are not allowing ourselves to test that relational trust. We are not allowing ourselves to embrace the peace and feel the boredom. All right. So that's one of those patterns that we really want to be aware of and say, wait a minute, is my mind playing tricks on me and I'm talking myself out of something good? Or, is it truly a threat to myself? The third pattern is over analyzing consistency. So when someone is consistent, it kind of goes along with what I just said. You doubt it and you start over analyzing. Well, why is he texting? Is this just his way of trying to be is this his way of trying to be overly available? Is he love bombing me? Or maybe he has nothing going on. I mean, what kind of man these days in 2026 just texts back? you start over analyzing something that is a normal behavior. This is one of the reasons that I think it is so important to be in community with people who are where you want to be or headed where you want to go. So, if you want a healthy relationship, you've got to get in community with women in healthy relationships. And this is no shade to people who are not in the place where they want to be in terms of relationships. But if you get with a lot of people who are bitter, about relationships and divorce, and there's no good men, there's no good women, there's this, that, and the other. If you stay around people like that, that's a mindset you're going to adopt because they're going to be speaking from their experience and it's going to sound real. It's almost like it becomes your real life algorithm. You know how on social media you click on something and they show you a million of those videos, and you start thinking that that's reality. You start thinking everybody has baby mama drama, everybody has baby daddy drama, everybody's fighting in the streets and just doing all kind of crazy stuff. And then you click on a different video where you see people at peace and enjoying themselves and talking about healthy love and growing with their partner, and your whole algorithm changes. Well, sometimes you got to change your real life algorithm, and that's by being in community with like minded people who are doing and going where you want to go. And that's exactly why I started my inner circle, the Boundaries to Bliss Society. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. The fourth pattern is pulling away when intimacy increases. Again, that's a fear response. It's one of those self protection mechanisms. When emotional intimacy increases, that's the next step. It's like a risk. And so you're getting closer to someone, they're starting to open up to you. Again, we're talking about good pacing, not overly sharing with trauma bonding in the beginning. And ironically, sometimes it's the women who fear needing someone the most who fall victim to this trauma bonding and oversharing in the beginning. It's almost like they don't have a filter. So it's important to have a filter and have pacing, but also to trust the process. So you all know I'm a therapist, and part of what we talk about in therapy, what I tell my clients is you have to trust the process. I can't tell you each week this is exactly what's going to happen and you're going to feel this way and this symptom is going to go away or whatever. It's an ongoing process with ebbs and flows, and it's about a dynamic, what you put in, what I put in. So you have to trust the process. And that's part of when intimacy and trust and closeness increase, you got to allow yourself to trust it. Think about it. When you go, anybody, you love the ocean? I love the ocean. Hoping to get there soon this summer. But when you lay back in the ocean and allow yourself to just float on your back, sun shining, waves moving. You have to just trust the flow and trust that you know how to do it. You'll be okay. If a wave comes, you'll be able to get up. Like you have to trust yourself and trust the process. And the fifth pattern is expecting disappointment before it happens. Again, that's the brain sitting there trying to protect you. But sometimes you have to rewire your brain and almost hijack it from engaging in that old pattern. So when you were the hurt little girl, of course, you wanted to anticipate disappointment because you didn't want to go through that pain. But as the grown woman, again, trusting yourself so that you first have to see if the person disappoints you before you overly anticipate it and start arguing and then start saying, well, questioning. Again, going back to pattern number one, testing before you trust a person. You know, and you're just deciding in your mind that they're going to disappoint you and you're going to let them know that they have no right to disappoint you. So it gets you into that defensive mode. Here's a trick, or here's something that I tell women, and something that I've practiced in different scenarios and have had to learn to practice. And that is when you become more secure and grounded within yourself, you're not as afraid of disappointment because you know you'll be able to get back up. You know your inner strength and your inner resilience. You know how to give yourself compassion, and you know how to separate what someone else did from your own worth and value. So if someone decides that they're not going to do right by you, okay, fine. You'll be okay. You will be okay. But you also have to know it's not you, it's them. It's a decision that they made. And on that point of not internalizing or absorbing what other people decide to do as being about your worth, we also have to give space. A lot of women I see are overly controlled and controlling in relationship. So we expect a person to want to be loved precisely how we want to love them, but we also expect them to solve problems the way we solve problems or to communicate the way we communicate. It's almost like we're looking for little clones. And when they don't do that, we get angry, we get impatient because it creates a sense of uncertainty and like, okay, what's going on? We just get overwhelmed. And I'm not saying this to make you feel ashamed that you're doing that, but to bring light to the pattern. So you have to understand that when you're building anger and resentment because the other person isn't doing exactly what you want to do, that's not going to soften anything within the relationship. There's two ways to shift a relationship. One is you decide it's not for you, you leave it. The other is within it, you have to sometimes change your perspective and how you think about things and your mindset. Sometimes you have to work on becoming the person who is her best self within the relationship. And I guarantee you, things will work themselves out. If someone is truly a narcissist, a trauma bonder, a grifter, a scammer, or whatever these things are, it will come to light. And you know what? You will still be okay. You got to trust that inner gut and that intuition. Right? Yes, that's bars, right? That inner gut and that intuition, that is so feminine and it's never going to steer you wrong, especially as you continue to heal and get secure within yourself. So let me ask you, have you ever rejected someone before they even had the chance to reject you? And then when you look back, you were like, "Wait a minute. Maybe that was a bit premature." Just think about it and ask yourself. So I want you to think about something. And it's not about your partner, current or past, your ex, but it's really for you to think about. When love begins to feel safe, what happens inside of you? Do you lean into that with your emotion and your being? Or do you start looking for reasons why it won't work? Do you start analyzing and start picking things apart? The answer to that reflection will tell you more than any dating app or anything like that ever could. You see, one of the things I've learned after years, almost 20 years of doing therapy and coaching, is that insight is powerful. But insight that you don't apply or truly process disappears by the time you wake up tomorrow. So you might have this aha moment, but if you don't find a way to absorb it into yourself and to apply it, it just disappears. And that is exactly why I created the Damsel Me Please journal. I wanted women to have a place to just slow down long enough to notice their own patterns, to really understand them, not to judge themselves, not to shame themselves, but to become more aware so they can start applying those changes in their lives. One of the prompts that I love in the journal asks you to reflect on the beliefs that you have carried into your relationships and whether those beliefs are still serving you in this day and age, or maybe it's time to let them go. Because that self awareness is the key to then moving on to change how we react, how we respond, and how we behave. And if what we've talked about so far has triggered something in you, touched something in you, I would encourage you to spend some time, slow down and spend some time with these questions and these prompts in the Damsel Me Please journal. I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes. Years ago, a mentor of mine said something so powerful, and I think it speaks to this whole idea of risk and benefit and being willing to put ourselves out there. She said, the same walls that keep pain out are also the walls that keep love out. And that really stuck with me. I've never forgotten it because it's like when you heal, you're not going to remove every single wall overnight. You have to learn which walls are going to actually protect you and which walls are actually keeping out what's beneficial. It's almost like a home. Yes, you might have an alarm system, you have locks, you have a gate or whatever, but you can't have bricks over the windows. You'll get no sunlight. You won't be able to get out if you need to. You can't have 100 million locks on every single door because you don't want anybody to ever get in. Then you're taking away the benefit of being in that beautiful house. So, really learning about the walls that you do need, we all need to protect us, which ones we can really start to let go of and actually relinquish so that we can have space for the love that we truly want. Right? So, shout out to the walls, having the discernment to know which walls we need to protect us and which ones are not beneficial. Remember, you don't have to be a person who's perfect, never has fears, never has doubts, completely sure all the time in order to experience healthy love. That's not really the goal. And that takes away the beauty of life. Part of life's beauty is that imperfection and that road that we have to travel. But what you do have to do is simply stop letting the fears of the past or yesterday's fears make the decisions for you today. I want you to learn to sit in this moment and make decisions based on what's in front of you. What is that person doing? Not based on what a past person did to you or what you're anticipating or what your auntie said, your girlfriends, and whoever was burned by love. You have to build a boundary around the woman that you are becoming today and in the future. And, in some of my entrepreneur spaces, I love how they talk about some of us are robbing our future self with the things that we are doing, the opportunities that we're squandering today. And sometimes that's in terms of money. We're just spending money, we're not saving, or whatever the case may be. We're robbing from our future self. But think about it in terms of relationships. What are you robbing of the future woman that has a fulfilling relationship? Who has inner peace, who feels loved, who feels balanced and at ease inside. If you're staying in a fear mode, or if you're really harping on the past and not recognizing your patterns, then you are robbing that future woman who deserves all of those beautiful things. So this week, I don't want you to so much focus on changing your relationship and going and doing all this work. I want you to notice your patterns. Every time you catch yourself assuming the worst, pulling away, overthinking, creating stories and narratives in your head about what he's doing, simply pause and ask yourself, is this wisdom or is this an old survival strategy or protection mechanism that's popping up? I want you to write it down, bring it into your journal, put it into the Damsel Me Please journal, because awareness is where the transformation begins. Thank you guys so much for joining. Don't forget to share this with a woman that you know needs to hear it. We are a community. As I said, we need community, like minded women, fulfilling relationships, becoming the best versions of ourselves, leaning into and embracing your femininity. That is your true power. So make sure you share and comment for me. Which pattern have you noticed in yourself, and which pattern are you planning to change? When you get the journal, make sure you drop a 1 in the comments so I know that you are part of the Damsel Me Please tribe. Okay, we need to know who our members are. And as always, we would love a review from you. If you enjoy the show, drop a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of the platforms that you listen to. We truly appreciate it. I will see you next week as we continue the next phase of this conversation. Remember, stay soft, stay aware, and stay feminine. I'm Dr. Nicole.